Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sam's Fans Live on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching, let us know in the comments by saying hi. Otherwise, we don't know who's watching. Today, I'm really excited to continue with our series, The Power of Stories. This is the fourth session, and The Power of Stories is a series of live streamed interviews in which I am chatting and interviewing therapists from the partner institutions that Sam's Fans supports. Particularly, we are talking about their stories, the stories that have influenced them and impacted them, and really we're discussing how powerful stories are. Joining me today is our therapist, Emily Grabo. Emily is a board-certified registered art therapist and licensed professional counselor in the state of Ohio, specializing in pediatric medical art therapy, grief and loss, substance abuse, and trauma-informed care. She graduated from Ursuline College in 2014 with a Master's of Art in Art Therapy and Counseling. She has been proudly serving families, children, and staff as the art therapy coordinator at Akron Children's Hospital in Akron, Ohio since 2017. So let's bring Emily into the broadcast. Hi, Emily. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to be here and to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. So, Sam's fans, today we're gonna try something different. Today we're gonna start with the story because that is the focus and that's really what we want to share with you. So, Emily, if you don't mind, I think you have a story in mind that you can share with us. I'll get off the broadcast for a little bit, let you tell the story, and then come back so we can chat about it.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much, Emily, for being with us.
Hi, Sam's fans. Well, first of all, thank you to Sam's fans for allowing me to come on and share my story. I think stories are such a powerful way to share about experiences and to really help educate people about all kinds of things, particularly expressive therapy. So, when getting ready for today, I started to think about all of the people that I've known over my years as an art therapist, and one story really kind of stood out to me in particular. There's a little girl that I met early on at Akron Children's Hospital, probably back in 2017, I want to say 2017, 2018. And here at the hospital, I see patients from kind of all over, lots of different units. And this particular young lady was just about 4 years old. And she was very sassy and very strong willed. And she was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. And when I first met her, we really worked to do a lot of things that would just be fun and kind of build some rapport and some trust. When you come to the hospital, your whole world changes, especially with a diagnosis of neuroblastoma, when you're being told that you're going to have things like chemotherapy and you're, going to have nurses that are poking you and people that are touching you and listening to you. And I think growing up, we often teach children that, your bodies are your own and you're in control over your body. And then to be thrown into a situation where all of a sudden you're not really in control over your own body and people are telling you how to care for your body. They have to touch you, to listen to your heart, and they need to look at your surgical wounds, and they need to do all kinds of things. All of a sudden your body doesn't exactly feel like your own. And so we did a lot of work with things that she thought were just really fun. And when I think of this little girl, I think of glitter. And let me tell you, we used glitter probably almost every session. And it was interesting. She was often very quiet. And I would wonder to myself, like, I really hope I'm connecting with this child. She always says yes to our sessions and she lets me come back. She's open to ideas that I have. And so a lot of what we did together was really about kind of giving her control and giving her choices, because in the hospital she didn't have a lot of control and she didn't have a lot of choices because so much of her life was being controlled. You know, you're going to have medicine at this time, you can eat these foods but not these foods. And um, we would use art to give a little bit of that power back to her. So I would offer, oh, I have glitter, I have paint, I have all of these things. Um, and so when she was here, I would see her every admission, and we would have our art therapy sessions together. But again, she would remain just very quiet, very quiet. Often it was just her and I. Those would be the times that her mom would feel comfortable that she could step away and grab a cup of coffee, or she could talk to another provider, or go take care of business, other things that needed to happen. This little girl has a sibling, a sister very close in age, a little bit older than her, who would worry about her when she was at the hospital. So often mom would step away, she might chat with sibling on the phone. And so it was very quiet. We would work, I would watch her use the materials. She would get real kind of messy sometimes, and we'd have to rein in it a little bit. And I would say, oh, can I help with this? Or provide a little bit of containment and a little bit of structure when she needed it. Um, until one day she was in the hospital and she had a complication from her treatment. And typically in the hospital, I work from a consult list. So pretty much I usually know where somebody is in the hospital. I can see if they've had a room change. So I was aware that she had a room change and noticed, this is really strange. She's in the PICU. I wonder what's going on, why she's not on the oncology floor. And, something must have happened. I went off to see a different patient that I was scheduled to go see, and worked with them, and noticed that I was getting pages on my pager. And so I came back to my office and I looked at my pager, and it was a nurse from the oncology unit asking that I call her back. So, I called back and said, hi, I'm calling. I had a page for art therapy. Can somebody fill me in? And right away she said, oh, this little girl, she was transferred to the PICU. I think you know her. And she is just beside herself, worried that you won't be able to find her in the hospital. And I was actually a little bit surprised by that at first. I knew that she was saying yes to our sessions, and I had hoped that she was getting something from them. But again, she was so quiet. She hardly said a word when we were together. And to this day, sometimes we'll joke about the stare that she would get on her face, like the kind of like that, like mean mug a little bit when she was doing something that she didn't want to be doing. And I would definitely get that look sometimes, when you're kind of putting a little bit of structure in place or kind of containing things. And I said, oh, well, let me run down to the PICU and I'll go check on her. And so, that's something that I think about a lot, that really sticks with me. And as an art therapist, when I provide education to people, one of the things that I always touch on is that there's so much happening on a nonverbal level that you don't see, and that as an art therapist, you're responding to intentionally and purposefully. And so from the outside looking in, it might look just like fun and it might look like crafts, but really there's a lot of clinical work happening on that nonverbal, unspoken level often. And so it was such a nice reminder of, wow, she really is getting something from this. And there was really, I think we were really successful in creating a relationship that felt safe, that was consistent, that she felt like she had some power in and some control. So that was, sorry about that. Something's beeping. There's always something beeping in the hospital, right? And so that is something that I think about now a lot with other patients, is you just really never know what's being internalized, or when it's being internalized, and when it's going to show, when the seeds that you're planting and your therapy sessions are really going to show up. So then, sort of an update about this little lady. I was able to see her in the PICU and reassure her I will always know where you're at in the hospital. I'll still come find you regardless of the floor. We'll continue to work together. And I think that was something that really strengthened our therapeutic relationship. And I had the privilege of working with her throughout her entire treatment, and would see her family at, hospital gatherings and things later. And it would just be such a joy to kind of reminisce of, oh my gosh, do you remember that time that paint spilled everywhere, or there was just a glitter trail going down the hall behind us because we just had glitter falling off of us, and we were like a couple of like fairies spreading our fairy dust everywhere we went. It would just be just so fun and just such a great experience to run into them and to see them. But I think one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this young woman today was because I've had the unique experience now of seeing her older and going through treatment with her a second time. So, unfortunately for this little lady, her neuroblastoma came back. And so she's currently being treated for a second time. And I think one of the things that I was so thankful for was that we didn't give up, and we didn't mistake her silence for disinterest, because she was interested and she was benefiting. And now that she's back for treatment, we have a really solid foundation of trust and safety for the work that we can do together. And it's been really interesting. She's older now, she's a couple years older, and she's now school age and has done school activities and fun activities from the last time I saw her in treatment. So our sessions these days, she's much more chatty, and she will more narrate the art that she's making, and we can really talk more about the stories of her experiences at the hospital, her experiences at home. And I'm just really thankful that I had that first experience with her. And because we got to know the family so well, we now also support her older sister. And so I am able to see the little girl when she's here inpatient for treatment, and I can see her sibling virtually. And then we all really kind of just rally together to support this family. So we provide music therapy. I provide art therapy. We have somebody here that does really cool creative writing and actually uses the power of story to help the sibling with the stress of treatment and all the worries that come with that. And it's really just been kind of like a wonderful thing to see all of our services come together to support a family. And I know that's a story that I think will stick with me for a long time. So unfortunately, I don't have the ending yet because treatment's still underway, but I'm hopeful for a happy ending.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That's
Yeah.
really a great story. And it sounds like you had a great bond with her, that you really had this therapeutic relationship that you mentioned. You were able
Yeah.
to connect. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
you started treatment with her, you said a couple years ago?
A couple years ago, she was 4 when she started treatment, and she was in treatment for, I want to say, about a year. And then they went elsewhere for some other follow-up things. But like I said, we would see them at hospital things, like little functions that
Mhm.
family would be invited to. And, we'd always get so excited. It was funny too, because I would sometimes run into her into the outpatient clinic, and then she would be very shy all of a sudden. And it would kind of go back to that like quiet, not talking. Um, but it's really cute, like, to kind of hear the stories that her mom will
Yeah.
tell later of, oh, she was asking for you, or she wondered where you were, or if you were going to be there today.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We do have some people watching. Nikki is watching.
Hey,
Then
Nikki.
Carmen has some great stuff to say. She said, "Hello, I can say that our art therapy and massage was as important in our daughter's cancer journey as her treatments. It is much more than coloring a picture together or molding Play-Doh. Art therapy gives these kids an outlet for their fears and frustrations. Just know that you matter." Thank you for being with us, Carmen.
Thank you so much. I think that's why I was so excited to do this today, is because it is so much more just the coloring, and I know that from the outside looking in, it can look like that, but it really is so much more. This little girl, her mom told me a story recently after they'd come back for treatment that her older sibling was like really struggling a little bit. And so, one of the things that we had worked on a lot with the little girl that was in treatment was frustration tolerance, because there's really a lot that you have to tolerate when you're going through a treatment, right? And it was really cute. She said that the older sibling one day was making art at home and was just getting so frustrated that like she'd made a mistake and things weren't going right. And she said, and her sister looked at her and said, now Miss Emily would say it's okay to make mistakes and we can always make it better. And so it was really cool to hear her kind of like repeat some of the things that we had talked about and share that with her sister and kind of like spread the love around. So
Yeah.
they're just a special family.
And it shows that she internalized the message, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the
Yeah.
and the fact that it had been so much later that she had remembered that is just, it's a real win. It's a real win
Yeah.
in my book.
We also have Julia Meeker saying hi. And she's
I
asking, are there any restrictions for types of art you can use on the oncology unit versus PICU or others? How do you decide?
Yeah, so there are, and even like different kinds of patients on the oncology unit, there are different restrictions. So like an example I give often, like patients that are having bone marrow transplants, I typically will buy brand new supplies, things that are easily wipeable, things that like won't grow mold or get yucky, that we would have to worry about, like those sorts of bacteria. And then I have like kind of sort of a sterile bin that's left in the transplant room so that supplies aren't leaving the room and coming back in. They stay with that person for the entire duration of transplant. And that's what we'll use for our sessions. Um, Unfortunately, I don't use a lot of like nature materials because of the risk of like bacteria or mold or those sorts of things on there. So yeah, we are very conscious of the fact that patients are immunosuppressed on that floor. But I will say, I think our department is just very cautious in general. All of the supplies that we use are either brand new or they are things that are like a hard surface, like plastic. Like I don't use like regular crayons, but I'll use the twisty crayons because we can wipe down the outside of that crayon.
Mhm.
We have special hospital sanitizer that everything is wiped really thoroughly and left to dry before it's used again with another patient. Sometimes it's just the limitation of the setting and not necessarily infection control. I work a lot in the PICU with families at the bedside, and often there's just so much going on in the PICU. Like if somebody's on ECMO and there's like tons of people in the room and machines and things happening, I'm mindful that I'm not bringing like a ton of things in. So I might put together a special like bag specifically for the person that I'm going to go see. So yeah, there are definitely from place to place, there's some differences for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And actually, that also reminds me to do a shameless plug to check out our website. And you can not only see previous interviews that I've done in this series, but also if you wish to donate. What reminded me about this was this idea of using new art
Yeah.
supplies for each patient, for each family, and that's one thing that we supported SAM's fans to make sure that our partner institutions have the materials they need. Especially, I feel our therapists, it's always good to have more of that.
Mhm.
Sometimes with music therapy, of course, you can also give a ukulele to a kid or something, but it's sometimes easier to wipe it and reuse it. But it's very important what you said, of control, infection control, and even giving each family their own supplies, so you can also support that. We actually also we sent some art supplies during the past year, right? Because during the pandemic, you couldn't really see people for some time,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So in the beginning, so back in March, obviously things changed drastically for everybody, but our colleagues. So at Akron Children's Hospital, I'm the only art therapist in the Expressive Therapy Center that responds to the medical art therapy consults. And then we also have a music therapist and somebody that does creative writing. So in March, we were rotating just one. Hi to Ronald McDonald House. We were rotating just one person in the office at a time. So I would be home for like an entire week at a time, and I still had people that I needed to see. There were COVID patients that I worked with that obviously I couldn't go into the room. So the supplies that Sam's Fans sent, we were able to give to nurses to take into the room. And then I would be on an iPad or a laptop, and they would have an iPad or a laptop, and we could see each other virtually. But also, a big piece of what I do here at the hospital has been home visits for a lot of our palliative care families, and supporting either the patient or the sibling or the parent in the home. And when COVID hit, we couldn't do that. So having those extra supplies really gave us the freedom to, we would FedEx the supplies to the families, and then we could do a virtual home visit. So it really helped us kind of keep things going. So thank you, Sam's Fans. Your donations really made a huge impact and have really helped us to continue to do the work that we love to do.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you to people watching and our supporters who really make it possible. So I want to briefly go back to the story that you shared.
Sure.
So it really impacted me, and also it made me think about how often in hospital settings there's this case where we see patients for a limited time because obviously we want to see them as little as possible because we want them to be out of the hospital. But then occasionally there are some patients that do come back and that we as therapists see over the years. So it was very interesting to hear you say how you started with this young lady when she was 4, and she would be maybe 6 years old now, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned those also those differences in the way that art therapy, or that you worked with her, right? Initially with her being more quiet, but now being a bit more chatty. Is there do you have any lessons you would like to share with us, both from this idea of having a long therapeutic process with somebody, but then also addressing their needs at different stages of their lives and their illness?
Absolutely. So I think regardless of the length of time that I see somebody, the one word that always is key is flexibility, because even if somebody is here for a short period of time in the hospital, things can change so quickly. They might get a new diagnosis, or like their results might be different. And so sometimes we go into session, and I've actually been in session with patients where maybe they were given news during session, and so mid-session things are changing and their needs have been changed. And so you have to be flexible and adapt to that. And so as a therapist, I think really I try to remember that they are the expert in their own lives. And so I really see the work that I do is holding space for somebody. I'm here to be a witness to their story and to be a witness to their experience. And I really believe that there's something really powerful about being heard and about being seen. And I think that's really where a lot of the magic happens during therapy. And I think that's why art therapy particularly can be so impactful, because you have that visual piece of art that really allows you to be seen in a different way and allows you to talk about your experiences in a different way. So I think those are some of the threads that kind of go through sort of both of those things. And that young woman, that girl, for her experience, I think the biggest lesson that I took away was just, and I knew this, but sometimes you need that reminder of just to trust the art and trust the process. I really truly believe that we create the things that we need to create. There have been lots of times where you're working with somebody and maybe there's like sort of a prompt or a directive, and that person creates something like far away from what that prompt was. And I really think that's because that's what they needed to create. That's what they needed to talk about. And my job is to follow them where they go, particularly in the hospital where they don't have a lot of control. I think letting them take the lead is really important.
Right. Yeah. And one other thing that came to my mind with that story was sort of this idea that for therapists, especially art therapists, music therapists, creative arts therapists, on working with children, it's almost like the children often think of you as a friend, as not necessarily a therapist. So this person is here to give me a shot, or like it's a professional relationship, right? They think of you as a friend. Even as a music therapist, I there is this book or this story about this individual who basically thought, oh, this is just my band. They're not therapists. It's my band, my music group. So that's just one thing that came to my mind when you mentioned how she asked for you and she was worried that you wouldn't
Right.
find her.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because I think part of some of the most healing experiences that I've been lucky to see at the hospital have been times where patients have asked that we make art jointly together. And I think that's part of it, is that you are creating together, and it's creating community and creating connection. And it doesn't feel so like professional, I guess. It doesn't feel so formal. It feels, I think, more genuine and authentic sometimes to do some things like that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
wonderful. Well, I know that you have a session soon.
I do.
So in the last couple minutes, if there is a last question or comment from the audience, that would be great. Or maybe a quick random question for you would be, is there a story that's sort of like those stereotypes, like Harry Potter or whatever? Is there a story that you hold close to you, that you've learned from, that you enjoy?
Yeah. That's funny. I was kind of thinking about that before this, and it's one of those things where somebody asks you, like, what's your favorite book, and then you go blank, like you've never read a book in your whole life.
Right.
Um, Kind of thinking about it, and I think one of the stories from my childhood that I can really connect to is The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And so, as a therapist, one of the things that I studied when I was still trained to be a therapist is internal family systems. And it's a lot of like parts work, and the different parts of ourselves that have different roles and functions. And I really kind of connected that back to The Wizard of Oz. You have like the scarecrow, and you have the lion, and everybody has sort of those like roles that they play. Like characters in a story, and so that's something that I kind of like go back to,
Yeah.
are the different parts there. And I think there's just so much metaphor in The Wizard of Oz that can be cool. There's like the journey and the road, and there's like the man behind the curtain. And I love stories like that where there's a lot of different metaphor that you can play with and kind of make your own meaning out of.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the things about stories, right? That they have so much to teach us in a way that
Yeah.
we remember as well, right? So
Right.
wonderful. Well, it's been really great to have you,
Yeah.
and you've shared so much knowledge with us and so much passion from your work. So I think all that is left to say is to thank you for being our therapist, for working with patients at Akron Children's, for working in this wonderful area, and for sharing a bit of your stories today. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Sam's fans, for all your continued support. It really makes a huge difference and lets us breathe a little bit easier, that we'll be able to do the things that we want to do with patients need to
Yeah,
do. Yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Right, so thank you for watching. To our audience, check out this link where you can see all the previous interviews. And actually, we have a story that Jessica shared last week that the connection was not too great, but we uploaded the audio of the story, which is like 6-7 minutes. It was really a wonderful story as well. Nikki says that we appreciate you as well. And I'll see you next week at the same time, Thursday at 12 p.m., 12 noon. All right.